Alrighty, hello. So I titled this Praising White Women by Default. I was looking at a live by Sunshine in the City earlier, and she was talking about how this 11-year-old girl was viciously attacked by these teenage black males. And she talked about how the 11-year-old girl's mother was outraged, but yet and still you have the parents, which is most likely are the mothers of these males, that were ready to jump on this mother of the 11-year-old girl. And then she spoke about a 9-month-old girl that got raped. And then she talked about how the guy had a 160-year sentence, but then he turned around and said that he didn't rape her, but it was her mother that put semen inside the. No, sorry, that was a 10-year-old girl that got pregnant. My bad. So the 9-month-old woman, excuse me, the 9-month-old baby that was raped was raped, I think, by another little teenage black boy, and then there was another 10-year-old that got pregnant by her mother's boyfriend. Here's why I want to go into and why I titled it Praising White Woman by Default. Because there was an incident on a college campus, and this happened, I think, a couple of years ago, where this white boy, and I think he was an athlete. I don't know if he played football or exactly what he did, but he was an athlete. And he messed around and raped this white girl that attended that same college, but she was drunk. She was drunk, and I think she was kind of unconscious. She might have known a little bit of what was going on, but she wasn't sober enough to really do anything about it. So she could have been aware, but then she was still kind of sloppy drunk. And he raped her. Okay, he had sex with her, and she wasn't fighting him off because she was out of it. So it was still considered rape because she didn't give her consent. Okay, according to her story, right? And so the white males, it was a white male at that college that was going to let this boy get off because of his future and all of this stuff, but white women were not having it. And this is what I want to say too, and I'm gonna say some other things. White women were not having it. Okay, so when people praise these white men and talking about how well they do their women and how they're there for their children, I think they're naturally there for their children. I think that's just they're innately there for their children. But for the most part, I think a lot of white women had to fight against a lot of abuse, and I know it's still abuse going on now, but it used to be worse. It used to be a lot worse, and so white women hopped in on that because that white boy, the same way these black guys get away with all of this rape in these HBCUs, that white boy was going to get away with it. It was a white teacher in the athletic department, off the hook. But white women were not having it. It was one of those PWIs, predominantly white institutions, okay? But you have black girls all the time getting devoured, getting raped. A 9-month-old getting raped, 10-year-old girls getting pregnant, 11-year-old girls getting attacked by black boys. And I remember in school, and it still goes on now, where these little boys hit you on your butt and you're not supposed to get mad at it. They just hit you on your butt. Okay? Or they say, hey, baby, or all this stuff, and you're supposed to say, hey, baby, back. And if you don't say it back, then they ready to fight you. But the black mothers don't have anything to say, okay, about that. So what I was saying is that the reason why a lot of these white men are the way they are, like a lot of the young ladies, the black women like to brag on these white men. Well, in a way, it's almost like you're bragging on the white woman by default, because that white woman ain't having it. You're not going to get away with raping their girls, their daughters, and think you're going to just slide by and the women are going to sit by and support you and allow you to keep devouring their daughters. And I want to also talk about an article that I read with that same incident. Some of you guys, might get offended by it, some of you because of different beliefs, but I'm just going to talk about an article. There were, not only did white women get on top of that to make sure that young lady had justice, but 600 white witches, it was in the article, 600 white witches got together, met up to put a hex on that young man that raped that lady, that college girl. 600 white women got together to put a hex on that boy that raped that girl. That is how much they care about their own image. That is how much they care about not letting a bunch of men away with raping and all this sexual assault towards women. Okay, I'm not trying to give them 100% credit for everything they do. I know everybody have their foolery. Okay, so don't get me wrong. I don't want anybody to get sensitive and think that white women, that anybody suggesting that they're perfect. No, I'm not saying that, period. I'm just using this one example of how a lot of ladies like to brag on how great these white men are. And of course, white men have their flaws, just like everybody else have flaws. Okay. But for the most part, they're much better patriarchs than the patriarchs. There's no patriarchs amongst the Black collective in the United States. It doesn't exist. It's a failed patriarchy. But what I was going to say is that a lot of what you see the way white men are today is because white women raise their standards. A lot of black men, they call themselves wanting to bash black women today because of some episodes on Oprah about black women going on Oprah and Sally Jesse Raphael. But I remember, a lot of us remember who are old enough, remember that it was a lot of middle-aged white women going on that show and complaining. Now, back then, white men were still doing 10 times more, well, more than 10 times more than what black men were doing for their women and children, but white women still complain. That shows you the level of standards that they have for their men, and that's why white men are what they are, and that's why a lot of black women are able to earn the fruits of the labor. Okay, you're able to enjoy the consequence, the result of white women raising their standards. This white man is the way he is because of the white woman. But when the black women did go on these shows, they rarely talked about how black men wasn't nothing. They mostly just complained because they felt like white women were taking their men and taking the best men. That's what they felt. But I rarely heard black women going on shows bashing black women. But what I do remember, growing up in the 80s and 90s, because I was born in the 70s, so I remember the 80s and 90s. What I do remember is that a lot of black men were talking about how they preferred white women, but during that time, it wasn't so much that black women had attitude, like they be complaining about weaves and stuff now. No, back then they complained that black women weren't freaky enough in bed, and white women were willing to do the things that black women weren't doing. That is what I heard a lot of back then. And so black women allowed themselves to be over-sexualized by supporting him in his degradation of her through all of this music and through all of this drugs and through all of this stuff. And now he's complaining that she's over-sexualized. So black women just have not set any standards for this man. Okay. And I want to go into how it's another black woman I listened to. I was just listening to her show, and she has black women clients. And she said that she and her client came to the conclusion that a lot of these black men complain about black women and stuff, but her and her client came to the conclusion that black men are just incapable of really being the man that a woman needs. But why is that? Why is that? Because can you completely blame it 100% on him being a black man? Or should you look to the women that set absolutely no standards, continue to give birth to them, and then without any plan, just birthing for consumption, just birthing for quantity, but not really caring about having a stable family, not really planning, not caring about economics, not caring about him having a role model. Mostly growing up in neighborhoods where a lot of gangbangers are probably going to terrorize them, you know. So why is it that a lot of these guys have an inability to really provide for their women and children? And don't get me wrong, I put up some responsibility on them too. Now, don't get me wrong, because I think that the aggression they have and the way they are is still not much different from a lot of the men in African countries. And so the way they are with their rape and their aggression and all of that different type of stuff, well, that part I'm not going to really just completely put on the women when I see it happening in around the world amongst just black men, period. It happens with men, but it's really, really bad with black men and melanated men. Okay. So that part, yeah, that goes on. I mean, there's something in their DNA too. Okay. It just, everything didn't come from the woman. Okay. But for the most part, them crying and being effeminate and unable to really take care of their women and children, and trying to understand why you're supposed to eat some fried chicken and stuff that's not even put on plates. Okay, you get no silverware, but you're expected to eat it. And they don't understand what's wrong with you. It's because you have a group of women in the black culture that set zero standards. That's why he don't understand. But see, the thing is, had there been a white woman that demanded some plates, it would have been okay, because white women are known to have standards. Now, I know it's a lot of them that get with these guys and they still allow these guys to run over them. Okay, I do know that. But for the most part, white women are known to have standards. So had it been a white woman that asked for a plate to put the doggone food on, it might not have been so bad. But black women are not expected to have standards. And that's why I said this many times before, I do not date them, because so many black women have tolerated it's not even subhuman treatment. It's sub-animal treatment too. It's sub-insect treatment. It's just sub treatment. Okay. Because so many black women have tolerated that, it just does not benefit me to date within this particular group, because I'm expected to tolerate the same behavior, but white women are allowed to have higher standards because they are known. The reason why they are allowed to have higher standards because they're known to have higher standards. Asian women are known to have higher standards. That's why the men are the way they are. You have misogyny in all groups of men. That's just them. Okay. But for the most part, a lot of these men are the way they are, and providers, not only because they care about their nation, they innately care about their nation, and black men just don't. They sell out their women and children to slavery. But the standards that the women have set for them, okay, the women have set standards for them. Okay, but yeah, that's all I wanted to say. I don't want to go on and on, but yeah, I want to go back to early when I was talking about this rape, how black women are just even complicit with teenage black boys raping 9-month-old girls. This is how complicit, and they don't report anything. And you know, you just it's just really sick and sad, and it's really I'm quite disgusted by it. I'm very disgusted. It's hard for me to really not care about a 9-month-old getting raped by some teenage black boys, or teenage boy, period. But I say teenage black boy because black boys get away with this stuff. How you get away? They get away with it when it comes to black women in the community, not when it comes to the law. Okay, when it comes to the law, they don't get away with it. But when it comes to the black women and just the black community, well, there's no community, but the black collective, period, that it's just this complicitness in devouring your children. And that's why it's just no future, because the children are the future. And when you allow them to be devoured, there is no future. You're dead. Okay. And the black race is going to dwindle down to about only 20%. And it needs to. I don't think it needs to be repopulated right now. I think it needs to die off, dwindle down, get rid of that sick, depraved energy that's even lower than animals. Get rid of that energy, because it doesn't benefit anybody. It doesn't benefit the earth. It doesn't benefit plants or trees. It don't benefit nobody. It don't benefit a bucket of chicken. It just does not. It's horrible. And it's just disturbing that little 9-month-old babies can just get raped and the community is okay with it. 600 white women got together to put a hex on that white boy at that college for raping that drunk white girl. 600 white witches got together to put a hex, because he was already going to face justice because the white women weren't having it. But it wasn't enough. He had to learn a lesson. And it was in the news. I mean, it was an article, so it wasn't something that was secret. They wanted to be known. You're not going to get away with this. You're not going to do this. Okay. And that's not to say I know some people don't agree with that, but I'm not trying to be moral here. I'm talking about the difference between other groups of women. Okay. But anyway, you guys let me know what you think, and I will talk to you soon.